Hi, I'm Anne Gaviola. Welcome to the Peak on Global, where we break down what is trending in the business world and what you need to know to stay ahead of the curve. Joining me now is Brett Chang from the Peak podcast. Welcome, Brett.
Hey, Anne, great to be with you as always.
Let's start with a look at what ails the Chinese economy. There are deflationary pressures. Its central bank surprised with a rate cut this week. Its once red-hot property market is slumping. What exactly is going on, Brett? This comes after 3 years of its zero COVID policy, and the world's second largest economy was supposed to come roaring back. It did during the first part of the year, but now it's looking pretty scary.
For the past 2 decades, China has been the global economic powerhouse. It's driven much of the world's economic growth. And for the first time, we're seeing a significant decline in that growth. Now, that causes a problem not only for China, but around the world. Now, there's 3 kind of main factors contributing to this decline. One would be spiraling government debt, both at the local, regional, and federal levels. 2 would be the destruction of their domestic property values. There's a number of companies that have been declaring bankruptcy recently and have been missing loan payments. And the 3rd would be a decline in international trade. So all of these factors are now creating a perfect storm for the Chinese economy that they're really struggling to get a grip with.
Yeah, when you talk about that perfect storm, it is difficult to kind of pinpoint what exactly that storm looks like. Interestingly, the Chinese government didn't bother to give an update on employment, and we know that this comes as youth unemployment in that country hit a record high. So getting accurate economic data from China has been, at least in my lifetime, let's say, tricky. Is our collective ability to get a full handle on what's going on there adding a layer of complexity to this China puzzle, Brett?
Well, this is part of the issue with China, which is that they are trying to preserve the CCP's control of the country and their mandate, they call it the mandate from heaven, to govern. And one way to do that is through opacity. And so the lack of information that they deliver to the Chinese people, it will hopefully, in their eyes, restore confidence in the government and their ability to solve some of these big problems. But from a foreign investment standpoint, I think it causes even more concern. There are people who are now even less interested in investing in China when they can't even get accurate information or data points from the government. So they're caught in a bit of a catch-22, which is they're trying to preserve their mandate to govern among the Chinese people, but at the same time, they're pushing away that foreign investment they so desperately need right now.
Yeah, the foreign investment piece is key. That's what they're trying to attract. Anecdotally, I remember during the Great Recession, analysts would resort to monitoring how many lights were turned on across China based on satellite images or images from space, or they check out electricity consumption for clues about how bad things were getting or looking for signs of improvement. It was a really interesting time. Now, our second topic brings us back to Canada and discussions ongoing about whether or not it's time for the federal government, and I'm including the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, CMHC, in this, to get back into the business of building homes. Our growing population is really putting the squeeze on our limited supply. Interest rates that are higher than we've seen in a generation are throwing a monkey wrench into the pace of construction, and the number of private companies willing to start and complete projects, well, that's a whole other story too. There's a real need for someone, or I guess many people, to do something or many things urgently to restore affordability, Brett.
We've talked about this many times before, Anne, but really the housing crisis requires a focus from each level of government to actually make a difference. Up until, let's say, the late 90s, the federal government was very active in home construction and building throughout the country, and they pulled back on that for a period of austerity brought by the Martin liberals. Now, what people are calling for is for them to get back engaged. They have a number of resources, whether it be the CMHC or it be intergovernment relations or the financing that they can deliver to create these projects and get them up and running as quickly as possible. And I think what people are just looking for is action, and not action from one level of government, but all levels of governments to address this crisis, which is becoming increasingly serious, especially for young people in this country.
Yeah, when you look at all the different levers that are available, I think the collective feeling is we are in a crisis situation. Pull all the levers yesterday. Our third story segues pretty nicely from that one. There is a firestorm online over at TikTok advertising a 200 square foot bachelor apartment, yes, 200 square feet in Vancouver's downtown east side that's going for $2,000 a month. That doesn't even include I think it's $80 extra for internet. This place features a pull-out bed and something that looks like a cubby to me, but is described as a walk-in closet. Is this a symptom of a rental market gone wild again in Vancouver, Brett?
It's absolutely that, and it comes down to supply. There's just not enough supply in the market to accommodate for the increases in population we're seeing, especially when it comes to immigration. I think it's great that we're welcoming more people into this country, but the federal government, provincial government, and municipal government, but really in this case, the federal government is not doing everything they can to ensure that we have adequate housing for people. And so what you're seeing now is a massive inflation in rental prices that are creating situations like this, where you have a tiny property where people can barely live and they're charging massive rates for them, rates that were unseen. I remember 2 years ago, I was paying $2,000 for my much bigger one-bedroom apartment in downtown Toronto. So the fact that we're seeing this now for much smaller bachelor units, I think really is indicative of what's happening in the housing market.
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough choice. I mean, for a lot of people in the hottest rental markets where prices have just gone through the roof, it's like, do you really want to live with 5 or 6 different roommates? How much are you willing to kind of downgrade yourself when it comes to square footage? It is really tough all around. Thank you, as always, for your time and your insight, Brett.
Thanks, Anne.
You can get all your daily business news with the Peak Daily Podcast. It's available for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you find your favorite podcasts.